The blade pressed against her throat before she even opened her eyes. Cold steel kissed the pulse point beneath her jaw, and Elara's breath caught, not from fear, but from the familiar scent that wrapped around her like smoke and winter nights. Leather, gunpowder, that expensive cologne that cost more than most people earned in a year. She didn't need to see him to know who held the knife. "You're losing your touch, Dominic," she whispered, her voice still thick with sleep. "I could have killed you 3 times before you got that close." The knife pressed harder, a warning. "Could have, didn't." Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the darkness of her bedroom. He stood over her like a shadow given form, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black tactical gear that made him look like death's personal courier. His face was all sharp angles and harder edges, carved from the same ice that seemed to live in his gray eyes. Beautiful in the way a loaded gun is beautiful. Dangerous in the way forbidden things always are. "Breaking into a woman's bedroom at 3 in the morning, Elara said, her lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. "How romantic. Get up." His voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of a man who'd long ago buried whatever capacity for feeling he might have once possessed. "The syndicate knows where you are." Her smile died. She sat up slowly, the silk sheets pooling around her waist. She wore nothing but a thin camisole, and she watched his eyes flicker down her body for just a fraction of a second before discipline reasserted itself. That look, brief as it was, sent heat spiraling through her stomach. They'd been playing this game for months now. Cat and mouse, hunter and hunted, neither entirely sure which role belonged to whom. "How long do I have?" she asked. 20 minutes, maybe less." He withdrew the knife, sliding it back into its sheath with practiced ease. "They sent a full extraction team, military-grade weapons, silver rounds, UV grenades. They're not taking chances this time." Elara stood, crossing to her closet without bothering to hide the way her body moved. She'd learned long ago that her beauty was a weapon as lethal as any blade. Her hair fell in dark waves to her waist, so black it seemed to absorb light. Her skin was pale as moonlight, flawless as porcelain. When she turned to face him, pulling a leather jacket from its hanger, she saw the muscle twitch in his jaw. "Good. You could have let them take me," she said softly, stepping closer to him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to hear his heartbeat accelerate. "Would have made your life simpler. The syndicate would have rewarded you, promoted you probably, given you everything you've worked for." His hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. For a moment, just a moment, something cracked in that icy facade, something raw and desperate and hungry. "Don't," he said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "Don't test me, not tonight." She leaned closer, her lips nearly brushing his ear. "Why not? Afraid of what you might do if I push too hard." He released her like she'd burned him, stepping back, rebuilding those walls with visible effort. "Get dressed. We need to move." Elara turned away, hiding her own trembling hands as she pulled on dark jeans and combat boots. The familiar ritual of preparing to run. She'd been running her entire life. 26 years of hiding, fleeing, surviving in the shadows, while the syndicate systematically hunted down every remaining pureblood vampire until she was the only one left. The last of her kind. The end of a bloodline that stretched back thousands of years. Worth more dead than alive to the people who feared what she represented. She was reaching for her weapons bag when the nausea hit. It slammed into her without warning, sudden and vicious, doubling her over. She barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach emptied itself, violent retching that left her gasping and shaking. Behind her, Dominic's voice sharpened with concern. "Are you sick? Did they poison?" "I'm fine," she managed, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. But she wasn't fine. She knew exactly what this was, had known for 3 weeks now, since the morning sickness started. Since her senses sharpened even beyond their normal supernatural acuity. Since she'd felt the foreign presence growing inside her body like a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. She was pregnant, with Dominic's child. The one night they'd crossed the line from professional enemies to something far more complicated played through her memory in vivid detail. 2 months ago, a safe house in Prague. Both of them injured, bleeding, high on adrenaline and proximity, and the certainty that they'd both be dead by morning. She'd kissed him first, tasting his surprise and hesitation before hunger took over. They'd come together with the desperation of 2 people who'd been denying what they wanted for far too long. Afterward, lying in the darkness with his heartbeat thundering beneath her ear, she'd known it was a mistake. Not because she regretted it, she didn't, couldn't, wouldn't, but because wanting him was the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. and now she carried the consequence of that want beneath her heart. A hybrid child, half pureblood vampire, half human, the genetic impossibility that the syndicate feared most. If anyone knew, they would kill her before the child could be born, would probably dissect her while she was still alive, studying how such a pregnancy was even possible. The child would become a laboratory specimen, a thing to be examined and eventually destroyed. She couldn't tell him, couldn't risk it, couldn't trust that the man who'd spent 5 years hunting her kind wouldn't choose duty over whatever fragile connection existed between them. "We need to go," Dominic said from the doorway, his voice tight. "Now." She straightened, splashing cold water on her face, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "I'm right behind you." They moved through her apartment like ghosts, gathering the carefully packed go-bags she always kept ready. Weapons, cash, false documents, the survival tools of someone who'd learned to disappear at a moment's notice. Outside, the city sprawled dark and glittering beneath a moonless sky. Elara could hear them coming before Dominic did, the military precision of their approach, the whisper of silver bullets being loaded into chambers, the quiet prayers of men who knew they were hunting something that could kill them all before they got off a single shot. "The roof," Dominic said, leading her up the fire escape with inhuman speed. For a human, he moved remarkably well in the darkness. 5 years of hunting vampires had taught him to think like one. They cleared 3 buildings before the first explosion ripped through her apartment. The shockwave knocked them both flat, heat washing over them in a wave that smelled of burning chemicals and melting steel. Lyra rolled to her feet, pulling Dominic up with strength that made him wince. Sometimes she forgot to pretend to be weaker than she was. "They're not playing around," he said, breathing hard. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye where debris had struck him. Without thinking, she reached up, wiping the blood away with her thumb. His pupils dilated as she brought that thumb to her lips, tasting him. The most intimate violation, the clearest declaration of what she was, what she wanted. "Neither am I," she said quietly. Below them, tactical teams swarmed through the wreckage, weapons drawn, searching for her body. They wouldn't find it, but they'd keep looking, keep hunting, keep trying to erase the last evidence that her people had ever existed. Dominic grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the edge of the building. "My car is 2 blocks north. We can make it if we move fast." "Where are we going?" she asked, even as she followed him into a running leap across the gap to the next rooftop. "Somewhere they won't think to look." His hand tightened on hers. "Somewhere I can keep you safe until we figure out what to do." The word safe echoed in her mind with bitter irony. There was no safe, not for her, not for the life growing inside her. Not for the impossible connection between a vampire and the hunter assigned to kill her. But as they ran through the darkness together, his hand warm and solid in hers, Elara felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Fragile and foolish and probably fatal, but hope nonetheless. They reached his car, a nondescript black sedan that probably had more armor and weaponry than most military vehicles, and slid inside. Dominic drove with controlled urgency, taking random turns, doubling back, ensuring they weren't followed. Elara watched his profile in the flickering streetlights. Strong jaw, straight nose, mouth pressed into a hard line of concentration. She'd memorized every detail of his face during the months they'd been circling each other, had traced those features with her fingertips during that one stolen night in Prague, had fallen for him slowly, painfully, inevitably. "What made you come tonight?" she asked quietly. "What made you choose me over them?" His hands tightened on the steering wheel. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I've been asking myself the same question." His voice was rough with something that might have been pain. "I've dedicated my entire adult life to the Syndicate, to their mission, to eliminating threats to humanity. And you're supposed to be the ultimate threat, the last pureblood, the genetic legacy of monsters who terrorized humans for millennia." He took a sharp turn, accelerating onto the highway. "But when I look at you, that's not what I see. I see a woman who's been running her entire life, who never chose what she is, who's only guilty of surviving in a world that wants her dead. And tonight, when they gave me your location, when they ordered me to lead the extraction team," he paused, jaw working, "I couldn't do it, couldn't watch them put a bullet in your head and call it justice." The confession hung between them like a living thing. "That makes you a traitor," Elara said softly. "In their eyes, in everyone's eyes. I know. They'll hunt you now just like they hunt me." "I know that too." She reached across the console, her fingers brushing his arm. Dominic, don't. He didn't pull away, but his whole body tensed. Don't make this about feelings. This is about right and wrong, about innocent and guilty. You've never hurt anyone who didn't attack you first. Never fed on an unwilling human. Never did anything except try to stay alive. That's not a crime that deserves execution. But it was about feelings. They both knew it. The careful distance they'd maintained for months had shattered the moment he chose to warn her instead of kill her. The safe house turned out to be a cabin in the mountains, 3 hours north of the city. Isolated. Defensible. Stocked with supplies that suggested Dominic had been planning an escape route for a while. Dawn was breaking when they finally arrived, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that Elara could only watch through tinted windows. Sunlight wouldn't kill her, that was a myth, but it would weaken her considerably, make her vulnerable. Inside, the cabin was sparse but functional. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a bathroom with a shower that looked like it had seen better days. The kind of place designed for hiding, not living. Dominic dropped their bags by the door and ran a hand through his dark hair. Without his tactical gear, dressed in just a black t-shirt and jeans, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. "Should get some rest," he said, not meeting her eyes. "I'll keep watch." "Dominic." She crossed to him, tired of the distance, tired of pretending. "Look at me." He did, finally, and the hunger in his eyes stole her breath. The same hunger she'd seen that night in Prague, raw and desperate and barely controlled. "This is a mistake," he said, even as his hand came up to cup her face. "Everything about this is wrong." "I know." She leaned into his touch, her own hands sliding up his chest. "I don't care." "You should." His thumb traced her lower lip. "I've spent 5 years learning how to kill your kind. Every weakness, every vulnerability. I could end you before you even realized I'd moved." "Then why don't you?" The question hung between them, sharp as a blade. Instead of answering, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. It was a collision of need and fear and desperation, all the emotion they'd been suppressing erupting at once. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she gasped against his mouth, her nails digging into his shoulders. They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding clothes between desperate kisses. His skin was warm against her perpetual coolness, solid and real and alive in a way that made her ache. When he laid her down on the bed, his body covering hers, she felt the weight of him anchoring her to the world. "Tell me to stop," he breathed against her neck. "Tell me this is insane. It is insane." Her legs wrapped around his waist, pulling him closer. "Don't stop." They came together with the same desperate intensity as before, but this time was different. This time there was no mission to return to, no separate lives waiting for them. This time they'd burned all their bridges, and there was only each other in the ashes. Afterward, as morning sunlight filtered through the curtains and Dominic's heartbeat gradually slowed beneath her ear, Elara felt the secret inside her like a physical weight. She had to tell him, had to trust him with the truth, but the words stuck in her throat, trapped by fear and the certainty that once spoken, everything would change. So she stayed silent, listening to him breathe, memorizing the feel of his arms around her, knowing these stolen moments of peace couldn't last. If you're feeling this story deep in your chest right now, do me a favor. Drop a comment below telling me what you think happens next. And hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get darker than you can imagine. They had 3 days of relative peace. 3 days where they pretended the world outside the cabin didn't exist. Where they learned each other's bodies with the thorough intensity of people who knew their time was limited. Where Elara woke every morning with Dominic's warmth against her back and allowed herself to imagine a different life. But reality doesn't pause for pretending. On the 4th morning, she woke alone. The bed beside her was cold, and panic spiked through her chest before she heard voices from the main room. Dominic's low rumble and someone else's higher pitch. A woman. Elara pulled on clothes quickly, silently, every predatory instinct flaring to life. She approached the doorway with inhuman stealth, listening. "Can't keep hiding her forever," the woman was saying. "The syndicate has mobilized every hunter on the eastern seaboard. They know you helped her escape. They're calling you a traitor, a sympathizer. Vaughn wants your head almost as much as he wants hers." Vaughn, the syndicate's director of operations. The man who'd orchestrated the systematic genocide of her people for the past 3 decades. The man who'd personally killed her mother when Lyra was 16. "I don't care what Vaughn wants," Dominic said flatly. "I'm done taking orders from him." "Are you insane?" The woman's voice sharpened. "Dominic, I've known you since academy training. You were the most dedicated hunter I'd ever seen. You believed in the mission. What changed? Silence. Then, I learned the difference between following orders and doing what's right. She's a vampire, a pureblood. They're not like us. She's a person, Iris, a person who's never committed a crime except being born wrong. And if the Syndicate can execute her for that, what's to stop them from expanding their definition of wrong to include anyone they don't like? More silence. Elara could hear Iris's frustrated breathing, the soft creak of the floorboards as she paced. They're going to kill you for this, Iris said finally. You know that, right? The second they find you, you're dead. No trial, no explanation, just a bullet and a shallow grave. Then I'd better make sure they don't find us. Dominic, Iris's voice softened. Please, come back, turn her in. I can talk to Vaughn, explain that she manipulated you somehow, used vampire powers to cloud your judgment. We can fix this before it's too late. I'm not coming back. Because of her. The pause stretched long enough that Elara's chest tightened. Yes, Dominic said finally. Because of her. Footsteps approached the door and Elara melted back into the shadows as Iris stormed out. Through the window, she watched the other woman climb into a truck and drive away, tires spitting gravel. When she emerged from the bedroom, Dominic was standing by the window, his shoulders tight with tension. How much did you hear? He asked without turning. Enough. She crossed to him, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. She was your friend. She was my partner. There's a difference. He turned in her embrace, his hands settling on her hips. Friends don't ask you to betray everything you've become. And what have you become? His gray eyes held hers, intense and searching. Someone who can't watch an innocent person die just because following orders would be easier. She wanted to tell him then. Wanted to place his hand on her stomach and confess the impossible thing growing there. But fear choked the words before they could form. What if he saw the pregnancy as a threat? As evidence that she really was the monster the Syndicate claimed. What if knowing about the child made him reconsider his choice to protect her? She couldn't risk it. Not yet. Instead, she kissed him, pouring all her unspoken truth into the contact, and let him carry her back to bed where words weren't necessary. But that night, after Dominic had fallen asleep, Elara lay awake listening to the sounds of the forest and felt the nausea rising again. She slipped from bed carefully, making it to the bathroom just in time. She was kneeling on the cold tile, head spinning, when she felt him behind her. How long? Dominic's voice was quiet, controlled. The voice of a man who just had his suspicions confirmed. Elara's whole body went rigid. She hadn't heard him wake, hadn't noticed him follow. Slowly she straightened, meeting his eyes in the bathroom mirror. What? How long have you been sick? He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You've been pale, tired. I've watched you struggle with food, the nausea, the sensitivity to smells. His jaw tightened. So I'll ask again, how long? She could lie, could claim illness, infection, anything but the truth, but looking at him, at the man who'd sacrificed everything to keep her alive, she couldn't. 3 weeks, she whispered. Since I realized what it was. And what is it? Her hand drifted to her stomach, protective and instinctive. What do you think it is, Dominic? She watched the realization hit him like a physical blow, watched his face cycle through shock, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. That's impossible, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Human and vampire genetics aren't compatible. Every study, every attempt at crossbreeding, they all failed. The DNA is too different. Apparently not different enough. She turned to face him fully, chin lifted. Prague, that night, we were both too reckless to think about consequences. He stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're pregnant. Yes, with my child. Yes, a hybrid. Yes. The word hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Dominic ran both hands through his hair, packing the small bathroom like a caged animal. Do you have any idea? Do you understand what this means? If the Syndicate finds out, they'll kill me. Her voice was flat, emotionless. They'll dissect me and the baby both, study us like lab rats, then destroy whatever's left. I know exactly what it means. Why do you think I didn't tell you? He stopped packing, eyes sharp. You thought I'd turn you in. Wouldn't you have, a month ago, before you decided to throw away your career for me? She laughed, bitter and broken. You're a hunter, Dominic. Killing hybrid abominations is literally in your job description. Is that what you think? He crossed to her in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. That I'd hurt you. That I'd hurt our. He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say the word child like it might make the impossible reality too real. I don't know what to think anymore, she admitted, and hated how small her voice sounded. I don't know if you'll see this as a miracle or a mistake. You'll want to protect us or destroy the evidence before it becomes a problem. His hands gentled on her shoulders, sliding down to grip her hands. Elara, look at me. She did, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. I don't know what the hell we're supposed to do, he said slowly. I don't know how we're going to survive this, but I do know that I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Not the syndicate, not Vaughn, not anyone. His hand moved to her stomach, covering hers. Either of you. The tears fell then, hot and silent, because she'd been so certain he'd react differently, been so sure he'd see the pregnancy as a betrayal or a trap. This is going to make everything harder, she whispered. I know. They'll never stop hunting us now. I know that too. We'll be running for the rest of our lives. Then we'd better get really good at it. He pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. How far along are you? Maybe 7 weeks, it's hard to tell. Vampire pregnancies are shorter than human ones. 5 months instead of 9, and with a hybrid, she shrugged helplessly. I have no idea what to expect. We'll figure it out. He said it with such certainty, such conviction that she almost believed him. That night they made plans, they'd move every few weeks. Never stay in one place long enough to establish a pattern. Use cash only, avoid cameras, live like ghosts. We'll need medical supplies, Dominic said, making lists on a notepad. Prenatal vitamins, equipment in case something goes wrong. Do you know if there's a vampire doctor we can trust? There are no vampire doctors left, Lyra said quietly. The syndicate killed them all. Anyone with medical knowledge who might have helped hide or heal other vampires, they were priority targets. His expression darkened. Of course they were. We're on our own. She placed her hand over his on the table. But we've been on our own this whole time. We'll manage. They spent the next 2 days gathering supplies and preparing to move. Dominic had contacts in the underground, people who owed him favors, who could provide documents and weapons and transportation without asking questions. On the 6th day, Iris came back. Elara sensed her before Dominic did, that predatory awareness prickling down her spine. She was in the kitchen when the other woman's truck pulled up, and something in her gut screamed danger. Dominic, she called softly. We have company. He emerged from the bedroom, weapon already in hand, moving to the window. His whole body went tense when he saw who it was. Stay inside, he ordered, already moving toward the door. But Elara followed anyway, keeping to the shadows, every instinct on high alert. Iris stepped out of her truck alone, hands visible and empty. But Elara could smell the lie on her, could sense the fear beneath her calm exterior. I came to warn you, Iris said as Dominic met her in the yard. Vaughn is sending a termination squad, 20 hunters, military-grade everything. They're moving out tonight. How did you know where to find us? Dominic's voice was cold, controlled. I followed you the first time I was here, put a tracker on your car. Iris's expression was apologetic but not sorry. Dominic, please, this is your last chance. Come with me now, leave her, we can still fix this. No, she's poisoned your mind somehow, made you think. She hasn't done anything except survive, Dominic interrupted. And I'm not leaving her, not now, not ever. Iris's face twisted with frustration and something darker. Then you'll die with her, is that what you want? To throw away everything for a vampire. Before Dominic could respond, Elara stepped out of the cabin. The change in Iris was instantaneous. Her hand dropped to her side where Elara could now see the outline of a concealed weapon. Don't, Dominic warned, moving between them. Iris, don't do this. Step aside, Dominic. No, she's a monster, they're all monsters. She's using you. She's pregnant. The words fell like stones into water, creating ripples that couldn't be taken back. Iris's face went pale, then red, then pale again. What? She's carrying my child, Dominic said, voice steady despite the bombshell he'd just dropped. A hybrid, the thing the syndicate fears most, and I'm not letting you or anyone else hurt them. For a moment, Elara thought Iris might actually shoot them both. Her hand trembled on her weapon, her breathing harsh and rapid. Then she laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. You absolute idiot, she said, but there was no heat in it. Just exhausted resignation. You knocked up a vampire, the last pureblood on Earth. Vaughn is going to lose his mind. He's not going to find out, Dominic said, because you're not going to tell him. The hell I'm not. This is exactly the kind of genetic abomination the syndicate was founded to prevent. A hybrid could. Could what? Elara interrupted, her voice cutting. Could be dangerous, could be powerful, could threaten the syndicate's control. She stepped closer, letting Iris see the truth in her eyes. Or could prove that vampires and humans aren't as different as you need us to be. Could demonstrate that everything the syndicate has done, all the genocide, all the murder was unnecessary. Iris's weapon cleared its holster, aimed directly at Elara's heart. Time slowed. Dominic moved, fast enough that even Elara barely tracked it, his hand striking Iris's wrist and sending the gun flying. They went down in a tangle of limbs, training and muscle memory taking over. Elara could have intervened, could have used her supernatural strength to end the fight in seconds. But this was Dominic's choice to make, his former partner to deal with. They fought in vicious silence, two people who knew each other's every move, every weakness. Iris was good, better than most hunters Elara had encountered, but Dominic was better, and he was fighting for something Iris could never understand. He got her in a chokehold, applying just enough pressure to make her go limp without causing permanent damage. When she stopped struggling, he released her, standing over her gasping form. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "but I can't let you leave, not knowing what you know." Iris coughed, rubbing her throat. "So what? You're going to kill me?" "No." He looked to Elara, and she saw the question in his eyes. She knelt beside Iris, catching the other woman's gaze. "I'm going to make you forget just this conversation, just the pregnancy. You'll remember warning Dominic about the termination squad, but nothing else." "Vampire mind tricks," Iris spat. "Of course." "Would you rather I kill you?" Elara asked mildly. "Because those are your options, forget or die, choose." Iris's eyes blazed with hatred, but underneath it was fear. Real, visceral terror of what Elara represented. "Fine," she whispered. "Do it." Elara placed her fingers on Iris's temples and reached into her mind. It was an invasion, intimate and uncomfortable, sorting through memories like files until she found the ones from the past 10 minutes. She could have done more. Could have rewritten Iris's entire perception of vampires, made her an ally instead of an enemy. But that felt too much like the monsters the Syndicate claimed they were. So she simply took the memory of the pregnancy confession, the fight, and Dominic's declaration, left everything else intact. When she pulled back, Iris's eyes were glassy and unfocused. "You should go," Dominic said gently, helping his former partner to her feet. "We'll be gone within the hour." Iris nodded slowly, still dazed. She stumbled to her truck, pausing with her hand on the door. "I hope you know what you're doing," she said, though Elara could tell she didn't remember why she was saying it. "So do I," Dominic replied. They watched her drive away, dust rising in her wake. "That was too close," Elara said. "It's going to get closer." Dominic turned to her, and in the afternoon sunlight his face looked older, wearier. "We can't stay ahead of them forever, not with you pregnant, not when every hunter on the continent is looking for us. So what do we do?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the mountains rising in the distance. "We disappear," he said finally. "Completely, new identities, new faces. We go somewhere the Syndicate would never think to look." "Where?" His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Somewhere they'd never expect, right under their noses." She would have asked more, but the nausea hit again, sudden and overwhelming. Dominic caught her as her knees buckled, his arms steady and sure. "We need to go," he said. "Now, before the squad arrives." They packed in silence, moving with practiced efficiency. Everything essential, nothing sentimental. Within 30 minutes they were gone. Behind them, the cabin stood empty, bearing no evidence they'd ever been there except for the faint scent of gunpowder and the disturbed earth where Iris had fallen. The termination squad arrived at midnight to find nothing but shadows and silence. "If you're still with me, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now. Because what happens next is going to break your heart, and I need to know you're ready for it." They drove south for 2 days straight, trading vehicles 3 times, paying cash for everything, leaving no digital trail. Dominic had a contact in Atlanta, a forger who owed him a life debt, who provided them with documents so flawless they could pass TSA screening. Elara became Julia Morty, a marketing consultant from Portland. Dominic became Nathan Cross, a software engineer from San Francisco. They looked nothing like themselves in the photos. Colored contacts changed her distinctive violet eyes to plain brown. Hair dye turned his dark hair auburn. Subtle prosthetics altered the shapes of their faces just enough to fool facial recognition. "Where are we going?" Elara asked as they boarded a plane to New Orleans. "Somewhere the Syndicate has their main training facility," Dominic said quietly. "Vaughn's headquarters, the heart of their operation." She stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You want to hide in their headquarters?" "Not in it, near it. Close enough that they'll never think to look. It's the one place they'd never expect to find you." It was insane, reckless, absolutely brilliant. New Orleans welcomed them with heat and humidity and the thick scent of the Mississippi. They rented a small apartment in the Garden District, paid 6 months up front in cash, and settled into their new identities like actors inhabiting a role. Julia Morty worked from home, doing freelance consulting that existed only on paper. Nathan Cross took a job at a local tech startup, establishing a routine becoming forgettable. And at night, when the city came alive with music and laughter and the eternal party that was Bourbon Street, Elara and Dominic held each other in the darkness and pretended they weren't living on borrowed time. The pregnancy progressed faster than either of them expected. By her 3rd month, which should have been roughly equivalent to a human's 5th, Elara's body had changed dramatically. Her stomach rounded with unmistakable evidence of new life, her senses sharpened to painful acuity. She could hear heartbeats from 3 blocks away, smell blood from even farther. And she was hungry, not the casual appetite of before. This was a deep, gnawing need that made her teeth ache and her throat burn. The baby needed blood, needed the nutrients only fresh human blood could provide. But Elara hadn't fed directly from a human in over 5 years, had sustained herself on animal blood and medical supplies, refusing to become the monster they claimed she was. Now, walking through the French Quarter with Dominic at her side, the scent of living humans was almost overwhelming. Every pulse point called to her. Every vulnerable throat made her fangs ache to descend. "You need to feed," Dominic said quietly as they walked back to their apartment. He'd noticed her growing tension, the way her hands trembled, how she avoided crowded areas. "I'm fine." "You're not." He pulled her into a shadowed alcove, away from the flow of tourists. His hand cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I can see it, the way you're struggling, the hunger the baby needs." "I know what the baby needs," she snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. The pregnancy was making her volatile, emotional in ways she'd never been before. "I'm sorry, I can't. I won't become what they say I am. What if I offered?" The words hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "What? Feed from me." His voice was steady, cert. "I'm clean, healthy, and you know I'm willing." "Dominic, no, it's dangerous if I lose control." "You won't." He tilted his head, exposing the strong column of his throat. The pulse there beat steady and strong, calling to her like a siren song. "I trust you." The 3 words broke something inside her. She was on him before conscious thought could intervene, pressing him back against the brick wall, her mouth finding that pulse point with unerring accuracy. Her fangs descended, sharp and ready, and she felt him tense in anticipation. "Do it," he whispered. She bit down. The first taste of his blood exploded across her tongue like fireworks, rich and warm and alive in a way animal blood could never be. She felt his hands grip her waist, holding her steady as she drank, felt his heartbeat accelerate beneath her lips. And deeper underneath the physical sensation, she felt something else. A connection. His emotions bleeding into hers through the blood bond. His desire. His fear. His absolute, unwavering devotion. It was intoxicating, addictive. She could have drunk forever. But she forced herself to stop after just a few pulls, sealing the wound with her tongue. When she pulled back, his eyes were glazed with pleasure pain, his breathing ragged. "Better?" he asked, voice rough. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The hunger had receded, replaced by a different kind of ache entirely. They made it back to the apartment in record time. That night, as they lay tangled together in the aftermath, Dominic's fingers traced idle patterns across her rounded stomach. "We need a plan," he said quietly, "for when the baby comes. Vampire births are dangerous even under the best circumstances. And a hybrid, we don't even know what to expect." "I know," she pressed her hand over his. "The baby's already stronger than it should be. I can feel it moving, kicking. It's too early for that in a normal pregnancy." "How early?" 3 months, maybe 3.5, but I feel like I'm 5 months along, maybe more." His jaw tightened. "So we have less time than we thought. Maybe 6 weeks, maybe less." The reality of it settled over them like a shroud. 6 weeks to prepare for a birth that might kill her. 6 weeks before the syndicate's most feared nightmare became reality. If you've made it this far in the story, I need to know you're still with me. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think they'll survive this? And smash that subscribe button because things are about to get intense. The next morning, Dominic went out alone. He returned hours later with medical supplies that must have cost a fortune on the black market. Surgical equipment, monitoring devices, enough blood bags to stock a small hospital. "Where did you get all this?" Elara asked, staring at the equipment spread across their dining table. "Better you don't know." He was organizing everything with methodical precision. I also found someone, a doctor. She used to work with the syndicate, but she got out. She's willing to help when the time comes. Can we trust her? We don't have a choice. It was the truth, brutal and simple. They were alone in this. No vampire midwives, no hybrid pregnancy manuals, just two people trying to survive something that should have been impossible. The weeks blurred together in a haze of preparation and paranoia. Elara's body continued to change at an alarming rate. By what she estimated was 4 months, she looked full term with a human pregnancy. The baby moved constantly now, strong enough that Dominic could feel the kicks through her skin. "It's fighting already," he said one night, his hand pressed to her stomach. "Strong like its mother." "Or stubborn like its father," she countered, but her smile faded quickly. "Dominic, what if it's born and it's a monster? What if the syndicate is right and hybrids are dangerous? Then we'll deal with it." His eyes met hers, fierce and uncompromising. "But I don't believe that. This baby is part of you, part of us. That makes it worth protecting no matter what." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love would be enough. But late at night, when Dominic was asleep and the baby moved inside her like something wild and untamed, doubt crept in with poisonous whispers. What if she was bringing a monster into the world? What if the syndicate was right to fear what she carried? The 5th month brought complications. Elara woke one morning to find blood on the sheets. Not much, but enough to send panic spiking through her chest. "Dominic!" Her voice came out sharp with fear. He was there instantly, assessing the situation with the calm efficiency of someone trained for crisis. "How much pain?" "None. Just something's wrong. I can feel it." He called the doctor immediately. Dr. Chen arrived within an hour, a severe woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and steadier hands. She'd been the syndicate's chief medical officer before she'd seen too much and walked away. Now she lived in the shadows, helping people the syndicate had marked for death. "Let me examine you," she said, her voice brisk and professional. The examination was uncomfortable and intrusive, but Elara bore it in silence. Dr. Chen's expression grew progressively more concerned. "The baby is growing too fast," she said finally. "Your body can't keep up. The placenta is deteriorating. If this continues, you'll both die within a week." The words fell like a death sentence. "What are our options?" Dominic's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Emergency cesarean. Tonight." "It's the only way to save them both." "But it's too early," Elara protested. "The baby can't survive. The baby is more developed than you think. I can hear its heartbeat. It's strong, abnormally strong for a fetus this age." Dr. Chen began unpacking her equipment. "But we need to move fast. Every hour we wait increases the risk." Elara looked to Dominic, fear clawing at her throat. "I'm not ready." "You don't have to be ready." He gripped her hand, his own fear bleeding through his calm facade. "You just have to survive." Dr. Chen transformed their bedroom into a makeshift operating room. She worked with practiced efficiency, setting up monitoring equipment, sterilizing instruments, preparing anesthesia. "I can't give you a full dose," she warned Elara. "Your vampire metabolism will burn through it too quickly. You're going to feel some of this." "How much?" "Enough." The word carried a promise of pain that made Elara's stomach clench. They began at midnight. Dr. Chen made the first incision, and Elara felt every millimeter of the blade cutting through her skin. She bit down on the leather strap Dr. Chen had given her, tasting blood as her fangs pierced her own lip. Dominic held her hand, his face white with terror and helplessness. "I can see the baby," Dr. Chen said, her voice tight with concentration. "It's God, it's moving, it's fighting me." "Is that normal?" Dominic demanded. "Nothing about this is normal." Another cut, deeper this time. Elara screamed around the leather, her back arching off the bed. The pain was beyond anything she'd experienced, worse than silver burns, worse than UV exposure. This was her body being torn open while she was still conscious enough to feel every second. "Almost there," Dr. Chen muttered. "Just hold on," a final pull, and suddenly the pressure was gone. Silence filled the room. Terrible, absolute silence. No cry, no sound, nothing. "Why isn't it crying?" Elara gasped, trying to sit up. "Where's my baby? Why isn't—" Then she heard it, not a cry, a growl, low and menacing and completely inhuman. Dr. Chen stepped back, her face gone pale, holding a tiny form wrapped in bloody towels. "What is it?" Dominic demanded, moving toward the doctor. Dr. Chen slowly pulled back the towel, and Elara saw their child for the first time. Beautiful. Terrifying, impossible. The baby, a girl, had Elara's dark hair and pale skin. But her eyes, when they opened, were neither violet like her mother's nor gray like her father's. They were gold, bright, luminous gold that seemed to glow in the dim light. And when she opened her mouth to cry, Elara saw tiny fangs, barely formed but unmistakably there. "She's perfect," Dominic whispered, reaching for his daughter, but Dr. Chen held the baby away. "Don't, not yet, look at her hands." They looked. The baby's tiny fingers ended in claws, small, sharp, retractable claws that flexed and extended as she moved. "She's a hybrid," Dr. Chen said, and her voice carried something that might have been awe or might have been fear. "A true hybrid, not just vampire and human genetics mixed together, but something new, something that's never existed before." Elara struggled to stay conscious, blood loss and shock making everything hazy. "Give her to me." "I don't think." "Give me my daughter." The command in her voice was absolute. Dr. Chen hesitated, then carefully placed the baby on Elara's chest. The moment their skin touched, the baby stopped growling. Those golden eyes locked onto Elara's face and something passed between them. Recognition, connection, love. "Hello, little one," Elara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your mother, and I'm going to protect you, no matter what." The baby's tiny hand wrapped around Elara's finger with surprising strength. And Elara knew, with absolute certainty, that she would burn the world down before she let anyone hurt this child. "Listen, if this story is wrecking you emotionally right now, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment telling me what you'd name this baby, and hit that like button to show me you're invested in what happens next." Dr. Chen worked quickly to stitch Elara back together, but her hands shook slightly as she worked. "You need to understand what you're dealing with," she said quietly. "This child, she's going to be powerful. More powerful than any vampire or human. The syndicate will never stop hunting her, neither will the vampire purists if any of them still exist. She's a threat to everyone's worldview." "She's a baby," Dominic said flatly. "Not a threat, a baby who deserves a chance to live." "A baby who can already partially shift," Dr. Chen countered, gesturing to the claws. "Who has fangs at birth, who growled instead of cried. Do you understand how dangerous this is? Do you understand that I don't care?" Elara's voice was weak but fierce. "She's mine, ours. And we're keeping her safe." Dr. Chen sighed, finishing the last stitch. "Then you need to leave New Orleans tonight. I can cover your tracks, but the birth will have created a psychic signature. Any vampire with sensitivity will have felt it within a 100-mile radius, and they'll report it to the syndicate." "How long do we have?" Dominic asked. "Hours, maybe less." They named her Lyra. It was Dominic's choice, from a constellation he said reminded him of Elara. "A pattern of stars," he explained, holding his daughter with careful reverence. "Beautiful and eternal and impossible to truly capture." Elara watched him with their child and felt her heart break and remake itself around this new reality. They were parents now, responsible for a life that the whole world wanted to destroy. They packed quickly, Dominic moving with military efficiency, while Elara recovered enough to walk. Dr. Chen had given her vampire blood, carefully harvested from voluntary donors, to accelerate her healing. It worked, though the sensation of her body knitting itself back together was nauseating. Lyra remained quiet through all of it, those golden eyes watching everything with unnerving intelligence. She didn't cry, didn't fuss, just observed the world around her with an awareness that seemed far too developed for a newborn. "She's beautiful," Dr. Chen said softly, packing up her equipment. "And terrifying. I've delivered hundreds of Bobbies in my career, never seen anything like her. Will you report us?" Elara asked directly. Dr. Chen met her eyes. "No, but I can't protect you beyond this moment. You're on your own now." They left before dawn. Dominic had arranged for a car through his underground contacts. They drove west toward Texas, planning to cross into Mexico and disappear into Central America. In the back seat, Lyra slept in a makeshift car seat, her tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Every few minutes, Elara turned to check on her, unable to believe she was real. "We made her," Dominic said quietly, catching Elara's gaze. "Against all odds, against all logic, we created life." "We created a target," Elara corrected, but her hand reached out to clasp his. "But she's ours, and that makes her worth everything." They drove in silence for hours, putting distance between themselves and New Orleans. They were 50 miles from the Texas border when Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went pale. "It's Iris." "Don't answer it," Elara said immediately. "I have to if she's trying to warn us." He answered, putting it on speaker. "Dominic." Iris's voice was tight with stress. "Where are you? Why? Because Vaughn knows, I don't know how, but he knows about the baby. He knows it was born. He's mobilizing every asset in the southern states. They're setting up checkpoints at every border crossing, air, land, sea. You can't get out. Elara felt her blood run cold. How does he know? Dominic demanded. There was a psychic spike last night. Massive. Every sensitive in the region felt it. They triangulated it to New Orleans. Vaughn put 2 and 2 together. Iris paused. Dominic, they're not just hunting Elara anymore. They want the baby, alive if possible, dead if necessary. Vaughn called it the ultimate test subject. In the backseat, Lyra began to cry. Not the normal cry of a newborn. This was different. Deeper. Almost like she could sense the danger closing in around them. We have to run, Elara said, already reaching for their daughter. We have to. There's nowhere to run, Iris interrupted. They've got satellite coverage, thermal imaging, every technological advantage. The only reason you've survived this long is because they thought you were still in hiding. Now that they know the baby's been born, they're going scorched earth. Then what do we do? Dominic's voice was raw with desperation. Silence on the other end. Then, you fight. You find a defensible position and you make them come to you. Make it cost them everything to take you down. That's suicide, Elara said flatly. It's the only option that gives you any control, Iris countered. Dominic, I'm sorry, I wish I could help more, but Vaughn has me under surveillance. He knows we have history. If I make a wrong move, he'll execute me as a collaborator. I understand. For what it's worth, I hope you make it. I hope that baby gets a chance to live. And I hope Vaughn burns in hell for what he's done. The line went dead. Elara looked at Dominic, Lyra cradled in her arms. What do we do? He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he thought through their impossible options. We go north, he said finally. There's an old syndicate facility in Montana, decommissioned 15 years ago. It's remote, fortified, designed to withstand vampire assault, if we can reach it. They'll know about it, Elara interrupted. If it was a syndicate facility, they think it was destroyed. I should know. I helped file the paperwork declaring it unsalvageable after a fire. His lips curved in a grim smile. But I also know that the fire never reached the underground levels, the weapons cache, the emergency supplies. If we can get there, we'll have a chance. It was insane, desperate, a plan born from having no better options. But it was something. They changed direction, heading north instead of west. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, the syndicate's forces were mobilizing. An army designed for one purpose, to destroy the last pureblood vampire and the hybrid child that should never have been born. Lyra's cries faded back into silence, but her golden eyes remained open. Watching. Waiting. And Elara realized with cold certainty that her daughter understood far more than any newborn should. Understood that they were being hunted. That danger was coming. That survival would require fighting back. The next 3 days were a blur of motion and fear. They drove only at night when Elara's powers were strongest. During the day, they hid in abandoned buildings, boarded-up motels, anywhere the syndicate's satellites might not see them. Lyra grew with terrifying speed. By the 3rd day, she looked 3 months old instead of 3 days. Her eyes tracked movement with predatory precision. Her fangs had fully developed, and she'd begun testing them on everything within reach. This isn't normal, Dominic said, watching his daughter gnaw on his finger with surprising strength. Even for a hybrid, she's developing too fast. I know. Elara was feeding Lyra from a bottle filled with her own blood, carefully extracted. The baby drank with voracious hunger, her tiny hands gripping the bottle with strength that should have been impossible. I think the vampire genetics are dominant. Accelerating her growth, her development. At this rate, she'll be walking within a week. Or fighting. The thought hung between them, terrible and unavoidable. Their daughter wasn't going to have a normal childhood, might not have a childhood at all. She was evolving into something dangerous, something powerful, something the world would never accept. They reached the Montana facility on the 4th night. It looked exactly like Dominic had described, a burned-out shell of concrete and steel, surrounded by chain-link fence and warning signs about structural instability. To anyone passing by, it was just another abandoned government project left to decay. But Dominic led them through the ruins to a hidden entrance, sealed with a security panel that still, miraculously, accepted his old access codes. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. Stay close, Dominic said, switching on a flashlight. They descended into the earth, the temperature dropping with every step. The underground levels had been untouched by the fire, preserved perfectly in climate-controlled darkness. Weapons lined the walls. Enough silver ammunition to kill every vampire in North America. UV grenades. Tactical gear. Everything the Syndicate had stockpiled for their genocide. And in the center of it all, a medical bay with functioning equipment and supplies. "We can hold out here," Dominic said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "For a while at least, long enough too," he stopped, because he didn't know how to finish the sentence. Long enough for what? For Lyra to grow strong enough to fight, for the Syndicate to give up, for some miracle that would make them safe. There were no good endings to this story, but Elara refused to accept that. "Long enough to teach her," she said firmly, looking down at Lyra's tiny face. "To train her, to make her strong enough that when they come, because they will come, she can survive, even if we don't." Dominic's expression crumbled. "Elara, you know it's true, we both know it." She crossed to him, Lyra cradled between them. "They'll never stop hunting us, all three of us, so we have two choices. We can run until they corner us and kill us, or we can make a stand, we can fight. And we can make sure that even if we fall, Lyra has a chance." She's 4 days old. She's 4 days old and already stronger than most human adults. Faster, more aware, she's a miracle, Dominic, and miracles don't follow normal rules. He pulled them both close, his arms wrapping around his family. For a moment, in the darkness beneath the earth, they were safe. But safety was an illusion, and they all knew it. "Before we continue, I need to know something. Are you Team Elara and Dominic? Do you think they'll survive this? Comment below and let me know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the ending is going to destroy you." The days underground blurred together. Dominic trained constantly, running drills with the weapons, memorizing the facility's layout, preparing for the inevitable assault. Elara recovered from the birth with supernatural speed, her body knitting itself back together until she was stronger than she'd been before. And Lyra grew. By the end of the first week, she could sit up on her own. By the second, she was crawling with inhuman speed. By the third, she spoke her first word. Not mama, not dada. "Danger." She said it clearly, her golden eyes fixed on the ceiling as if she could see through concrete and earth to the sky above. Elara's blood ran cold. "What do you sense, baby?" "Coming," Lyra said, her tiny voice carrying absolute certainty. "They're coming." Dominic checked the security monitors immediately. At first, there was nothing, just empty landscape and darkness. Then, on the thermal imaging, heat signatures began to appear, dozens of them, moving in coordinated patterns, surrounding the facility. "How many?" Elara asked, already reaching for weapons. 40, maybe 50. Dominic's voice was grim. "Full assault team, they're not taking chances. Can we hold them off, for a while?" "Not forever." The word hung unspoken between them. They had maybe an hour before the Syndicate breached the facility, an hour to prepare, to say goodbye, to accept that this was where their story ended. Elara dressed Lyra in tactical gear designed for children, the smallest size they could find in the facility. It was still too big, but she made it work. "Listen to me," she told her daughter, kneeling to look her in the eyes. "When the fighting starts, you hide, you stay quiet, you survive. Do you understand?" Lyra's golden eyes held hers with disturbing intelligence. "Mama fight. Yes, Mama and Daddy will fight. Lyra fight too. No, Lyra hides." Elara gripped her daughter's tiny shoulders. "You're special, important, the last of your kind. You have to survive this, even if we don't." "No," Lyra's voice rose, anguished. "No, leave, stay together." Tears burned Elara's eyes. Her daughter was barely 3 weeks old, but understood exactly what was about to happen. "I love you," Elara whispered, pulling Lyra into a fierce embrace. "More than anything in this world or any other, and that's why you have to hide, that's why you have to live." Dominic joined them, wrapping his arms around both. For a moment they held each other in silence. Then the alarms began to scream. "They're breaching the upper levels," Dominic said, pulling away. He handed Elara a weapon, a modified assault rifle loaded with UV rounds. "East corridor, I'll take west. We funnel them into the kill zone. And Lyra, medical bay, panic room, the walls are reinforced. She'll be safe there until," his voice cracked, "until it's over." They got Lyra into the panic room, a small chamber with 6-inch thick steel walls and its own air supply. She cried as they sealed the door, her tiny fists pounding against the metal. "Be strong, little star," Dominic whispered, his hand pressed to the door. "Be stronger than us." Then they moved into position. The Syndicate came in waves. First, the scouts, easily dispatched with well-placed shots. Then the main force, trained hunters with silver bullets and UV grenades. Soldiers who'd spent years learning to kill vampires. Elara moved through them like death incarnate, faster than they could track, stronger than they'd prepared for. She'd been holding back for so long, trying to be less than she was. Now, fighting for her daughter's life, she held nothing back. She tore through soldiers with her bare hands, ripped out throats with her fangs, moved like a nightmare made flesh. Blood painted the walls. Screams echoed through the corridors. But there were too many. For everyone she killed, 2 more appeared. She felt bullets tear through her body, felt the burn of silver in her blood. Pain became background noise. Survival became the only truth. Across the facility, she heard Dominic's weapon firing in controlled bursts. Heard him shouting orders, trying to coordinate their defense like this was just another mission. But his voice was growing weaker, more desperate. He was injured. Maybe dying. Elara tried to reach him, but they kept coming. An endless tide of hunters, all willing to die to complete their mission. She lost track of time. Minutes, hours, it all blurred together into violence and pain and the desperate need to protect what mattered most. Then she heard Vaughn's voice over the facility's intercom system. "Elara, it's over. You've killed 32 of my men. Impressive, but futile. We've located the panic room. We're bringing in cutting equipment. You have 10 minutes to surrender before we torch the entire facility with your daughter inside." 10 minutes. Not enough time to reach Lyra. Not enough time to get her out, just enough time to make a choice. Elara found Dominic in the west corridor, pinned down behind cover, bleeding from multiple wounds. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. "I can't move my legs," he said, trying for a smile that came out as a grimace. "Think my spine's hit. I can carry you. We can." "No. You can't fight and carry me, and Lyra needs you fighting." He gripped her hand. "Go protect our daughter. I can't leave you. You have to." His eyes held hers, gray and steady despite the pain. "She's what matters now, not us, her." Tears streamed down Elara's face. "I love you. I love you too, both of you." He released her hand. "Now go and make them pay for what they've taken from us." She kissed him one last time, tasting blood and tears and goodbye. Then she ran. The panic room was surrounded by syndicate soldiers, their cutting torches already eating through the steel. Inside, Elara could hear Lyra screaming. Not crying, screaming in rage and fear and something that sounded almost like words. Elara hit them like a freight train. She killed without mercy, without hesitation, without anything but pure maternal fury. These were the people who'd hunted her entire life, who'd murdered her family, who'd forced her into a life of running and hiding, who were now trying to take her daughter. She painted the corridor red with their blood, but even as she fought, she heard the cutting torch break through, heard Vaughn's triumphant shout, heard Lyra's screams intensify. "No!" Elara threw herself at the panic room door just as it swung open. Vaughn stood there, holding Lyra in one arm, a silver-plated pistol pressed to the baby's temple. "Hello, Elara," he said calmly. "I believe we have something to discuss." She froze, every predatory instinct screaming at her to attack. But the gun against her daughter's head held her paralyzed. "Let her go," she said, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "She's innocent, she's just a baby." "She's an abomination," Vaughn corrected. "A hybrid that should never have existed, but she does exist, and she's going to help us understand how to prevent others like her from being born." He studied Lyra with clinical detachment. "Fascinating. She's already aged several weeks in just 3. Imagine what we could learn from her genetic code." "You want to study her." Elara laughed, bitter and broken. "You want to dissect my daughter like a lab experiment? Not just her." Vaughn's smile widened. "You too, the last pureblood, the mother of the first hybrid, your genetic material is invaluable." Behind him, soldiers moved into position. Dozens of them, all armed, all ready to open fire the second Vaughn gave the order. Elara understood then. There was no negotiating, no mercy, no escape. This was the end. "I'll make you a deal," Vaughn said. "Surrender now peacefully, and I'll ensure your daughter is kept alive. Comfortable, even, well-treated while we conduct our research. Fight, and I kill her right now, quick and clean. Her suffering ends before it truly begins. Some choice. It's the only one you have." Elara looked at Lyra, held in the arms of her enemy. Her daughter's golden eyes met hers, and she saw something there that broke her heart. Forgiveness, understanding, acceptance of what had to happen next. "I'm sorry," Elara whispered. "I'm so sorry, baby." Then she moved. Faster than Vaughn could track, faster than his finger could squeeze the trigger. She grabbed Lyra with one hand and drove the other through Vaughn's chest with enough force to crush his heart. He died instantly, eyes wide with shock, but his soldiers opened fire. The first bullet caught Elara in the shoulder, the second in her chest, the third in her stomach. She kept moving, kept running. kept shielding Lyra's tiny body with her own as bullets tore through her flesh. She made it 5 steps before her legs gave out. She collapsed against the wall, sliding down, leaving a trail of blood in her wake. Lyra clutched to her chest. The shooting stopped. Soldiers surrounded her, weapons trained, waiting for orders from a commander who was already dead. "Mama!" Lyra's tiny voice was thick with tears. "SHH, it's okay." Elara pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead, tasting blood, her own blood. "You're going to be okay. Mama hurt." I know, baby." Her vision was going dark. Blood loss, too many wounds. Even her vampire healing couldn't save her this time. "Listen to me, Lyra. You have to be strong now, stronger than anyone. Can you do that for Mama?" Lyra strong. "That's my girl." Elara's voice was fatting. "I love you. Daddy loves you. Never forget that." Never forget. The world spun. She heard footsteps approaching. Heard someone giving orders to secure the hybrid. Heard Lyra screaming as they tried to pull her from Elara's failing grip. And then she heard something else. Gunfire. Different from before, coming from a different direction. The soldiers around her turned, shouting in confusion and alarm. Through her fatting vision, Elara saw a figure moving through them like a ghost. Fast, deadly, precise. Dominic. He shouldn't have been able to walk. Shouldn't have been able to fight, but somehow through sheer force of will he was there, killing anyone who came between him and his family. He reached them, collapsing beside Elara, his hands finding hers. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got both of you. You shouldn't be here, your spine doesn't matter." He was crying now, tears mixing with blood on his face. "Nothing matters except this, us, together." More gunfire, more shouting. The facility was chaos now, soldiers running everywhere, trying to contain a situation that had spiraled completely out of control. Elara felt her consciousness slipping away, felt the world growing cold and distant. "Take care of her," she breathed. "Promise me. We'll both take care of her," Dominic said fiercely. "You're not dying, I won't let you die." But they both knew the truth. She was already gone. The last thing Elara saw was her daughter's golden eyes, bright and fierce and alive. And then there was nothing. If you're crying right now, I need you to know this isn't over yet. Comment below and tell me what you're feeling. And subscribe because the final act is going to shatter everything you thought you knew. Dominic held Elara's body as her last breath left her. Around him, the facility burned. Somewhere in the chaos, someone had triggered the self-destruct protocol. Fire bloomed through the corridors like flowers of destruction, consuming everything. Syndicate soldiers scattered, abandoning their mission in favor of survival. Dominic held his wife's cooling body and felt something inside him break beyond repair. Lyra pressed herself against her mother's chest, her tiny hands clutching Elara's blood-soaked shirt, refusing to let go. She didn't cry, didn't scream, just held on with desperate, silent determination. "She's gone, Lyra," Dominic whispered, his voice raw. "No," Lyra's voice came out with inhuman force. "Mama not gone, Mama wake up." "She can't, the wounds are too," but even as he spoke, he felt something change. Lyra's hands began to glow. A soft, golden light emanated from her palms where they pressed against Elara's wounds. The light pulsed in rhythm with a heartbeat, but not Lyra's, not Dominic's, Elara's. "What are you doing?" Dominic breathed. Lyra didn't answer. Her golden eyes had gone completely luminous, blazing like twin suns. The light spread from her hands across Elara's entire body, crawling beneath the skin, seeking out every wound, every injury, every place where death had taken hold. Dominic watched in stunned silence as the bullets began to push themselves out of Elara's flesh, as torn muscle knitted back together, as shattered bones realigned and fused. "That's impossible," he whispered, but he was watching it happen. Lyra's power, whatever it was, flowed into her mother like liquid life, filling all the empty spaces death had carved. The golden light grew brighter, so bright Dominic had to shield his eyes. Then it vanished. Lyra collapsed against her mother's chest, exhausted, her tiny body limp, and Elara's eyes opened. Not the violet they'd been before. Gold, blazing, brilliant gold that matched their daughter's exactly. She gasped, her body arching as life slammed back into it with violent force. Her hands went to her chest, feeling for wounds that were no longer there. What? She saw Lyra, unconscious against her, and panic flooded her features. "Lyra, what happened? She saved you." Dominic's voice was thick with emotion. "I don't know how, but she saved you." Elara gathered her daughter close, checking her pulse, her breathing, everything. Lyra was alive, just sleeping, but there was something different about her now. She looked smaller somehow, younger, like the act of healing her mother had drained something vital from her. We have to move, Dominic said, struggling to his feet. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fatting fast. The facility is coming down. Elara stood, Lyra cradled in her arms, and realized something was different about her own body. She felt stronger than before, faster. Her senses were sharper, more refined. And beneath it all, humming through her veins like an electric current, was power. Pure, unfettered power that she'd never possessed before. What did she do to me? Elara whispered. Later, move now. They ran through the burning facility, Elara supporting Dominic as he limped beside her. Behind them, explosions rocked the underground levels, the weapons cache igniting, the fuel reserves detonating. Everything the Syndicate had stored here erupting in a chain reaction of destruction. They made it outside just as the entire facility collapsed inward, disappearing into a crater of fire and rubble. The few Syndicate soldiers who'd survived the chaos had already fled. No one tried to stop them. They were alone in the Montana wilderness, surrounded by darkness and smoke and the smell of burning metal. Dominic collapsed against a tree, his face gray with blood loss and exhaustion. We did it. We survived. You're dying, Elara said flatly, seeing the extent of his injuries now that they had light. The bullet in his spine hadn't just paralyzed him, it was bleeding internally, slowly killing him. I know. No. She knelt beside him, Lyra still unconscious in her arms. No, you don't get to die. Not after everything. Not after. Elara. He cupped her face with a trembling hand. It's okay, you're alive, Lyra's alive, that's all that matters. I can save you. How? She didn't answer, just gently laid Lyra on the ground beside him and pulled him into her arms. What are you doing? He asked. Something I swore I'd never do. She bit her own wrist, opening a vein, and pressed it to his lips. Drink. He tried to pull away. No. I can't become. You won't become a vampire, not fully, but my blood will heal you, give you strength, keep you alive. She forced her wrist against his mouth. Drink, Dominic, please, I can't lose you too. The desperation in her voice broke through his resistance. He drank. Her blood flowed into him, warm and rich and alive with power. He felt it spreading through his system, seeking out the damage, beginning to repair what had been broken. The pain faded. The paralysis receded. Strength returned to limbs that had gone numb. When she pulled her wrist away, he gasped, his eyes wide with shock. How do you feel? Elara asked. Stronger, clearer. He flexed his hands, testing his renewed mobility. The pain's gone, the wounds they're healing, I can feel it. Side effects of vampire blood in a human system. Temporary enhancement, accelerated healing. It'll wear off in a few hours, but by then you should be stable. And after it wears off, she met his eyes. You'll be human again, mortal, vulnerable, but alive. He pulled her close, kissing her with desperate relief and gratitude. Thank you. Lyra stirred between them, her golden eyes opening slowly. She looked at her parents, both alive, both whole, and smiled. Mama, Daddy, together. Together, Elara confirmed, gathering her daughter close. Always together. But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. The Syndicate wouldn't stop, wouldn't give up. Vaughn was dead, but there would be others, always others. The organization was too large, too well-funded, too ideologically committed to their mission. And now, with Vaughn's death and the destruction of their Montana facility, they'd be more determined than ever. We can't run forever, Dominic said quietly, reading her thoughts. They'll keep coming, for Lyra, for you, for me now probably since I've got vampire blood in my system. I know. So what do we do? Elara looked down at Lyra. At the miracle child who'd brought her back from death, who represented everything the Syndicate feared and everything the world needed. And she made a decision. We stop running, she said. We stop hiding. We find every vampire survivor, every hybrid, every person the Syndicate has marked for death, and we build an army. Dominic stared at her. That's insane, impossible, suicidal. She smiled, cold and fierce. Probably all three, but I'm done being prey. I'm done letting them dictate the terms of our existence. They want a war. We'll give them a war. You're talking about fighting the most powerful paramilitary organization on the planet. I'm talking about survival, real survival, not just staying alive day to day, but actually living, building a future where Lyra doesn't have to spend her life running. Elara's golden eyes blazed with determination. Where she can be what she is without fear, where hybrid children can exist. Where vampires and humans can coexist instead of one hunting the other to extinction. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what she was proposing. Then he smiled. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just trying to survive. I never realized you were a revolutionary. Neither did I, but they made me into one. She stood, Lyra in her arms, and looked toward the horizon where dawn was beginning to break. Every person they've killed, every family they've destroyed, every child they've marked for death, it all led to this moment. Where do we start? With the shadows, with the forgotten, with everyone the syndicate thinks they've already beaten. She turned to face him fully. And we start by making sure Vaughn's death means something, by making sure every hunter, every operative, every syndicate sympathizer knows that they failed, that the last pureblood survived, that the hybrid child they wanted to destroy is alive and growing stronger every day. Dominic pulled himself to his feet, testing his newly healed body. You want to send a message? I want to send a declaration of war. Lyra laughed then, a sound of pure joy that seemed wrong in the context of everything they'd just survived. But looking at her daughter's smile, Elara realized something. This was what they'd been fighting for all along. Not just survival, not just staying ahead of their hunters, but the right to experience joy, to laugh, to love without fear. To live, we'll need help, Dominic said pragmatically. Resources, safe houses, people we can trust. I know where to start. Elara shifted Lyra to one hip, her free hand finding Dominic's. There's a vampire named Sienna who went underground 20 years ago. Last I heard, she was running a sanctuary in Eastern Europe for hybrid experiments that escaped syndicate labs. If anyone knows how to build a resistance, it's her. Eastern Europe is a long way from Montana. Then we'd better start walking. They moved through the forest as the sun rose, 3 survivors of a massacre, 3 pieces of a family that should never have existed. Behind them, the smoking ruins of the syndicate facility stood as a monument to their victory. And ahead of them, the whole world waited, hostile, dangerous, and completely unprepared for what was coming. If you've made it this far, you're invested. I know you are. So here's what I need. Comment below and tell me. Should they find allies, or is everyone they meet a potential enemy? Your answer might just influence what happens next. And hit that subscribe button because this story is far from over. 3 months later. The safe house in Prague was nothing like the cabin in Montana. This was urban, modern, hidden in plain sight among the tourists and students who flooded the city's ancient streets. Lyra had aged another 6 months in the 12 weeks since the facility. She looked like a toddler now, maybe 2 years old, but she spoke in complete sentences and understood concepts far beyond her apparent age. Mama, why do we hide? She asked one evening, watching the crowds below from their apartment window. Elara knelt beside her daughter, following her gaze. Because there are people who fear what you are, who would hurt you if they could. Why they fear me? Because you're different, special, and people often fear what they don't understand. Lyra was quiet for a moment, her golden eyes tracking a family walking past below. Mother, father, child, normal, safe, everything Lyra could never be. I want to go outside, she said softly. I know, baby, soon. You always say soon. The accusation stung because it was true. They'd been hiding for months now, waiting for Dominic to make contact with potential allies, waiting for the right moment to emerge from the shadows. But the right moment never seemed to come. The syndicate had doubled down after Vaughn's death. A hardliner named Helena Cross had taken command, and under her leadership, the organization had become even more ruthless, more efficient, more willing to accept civilian casualties in pursuit of their targets. 17 vampires had been killed in the past month alone. 2 hybrid children discovered and terminated before they could reach their first birthday. The syndicate's message was clear. There would be no mercy, no exceptions, no peace. Dominic entered the apartment, his expression grim. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Elara asked, already moving Lyra away from the window. The kind where Iris just sent me an encrypted message warning that Helena Cross knows we're in Prague. She's mobilizing a strike team. We have maybe 6 hours. How did she find us? Satellite surveillance, facial recognition. They've been running our pictures through every camera feed in Eastern Europe. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. We got careless. Someone saw us, reported us. Elara felt her blood run cold. They'd been so careful, never went out during the day, always wore disguises when they ventured outside. Never stayed in one place longer than necessary, but it hadn't been enough. We run again, she said, already moving to pack their bags. No, Dominic's voice stopped her. Elara, we can't keep doing this. Every time we run, we leave a trail. Every time we hide, we give them time to close the net tighter. Running isn't working anymore. So what do you suggest? We stand and fight against a full strike team with Lyra here. I suggest we do what you said 3 months ago. We stop being prey. He pulled out a tablet, showing her a map with several locations marked in red. These are vampire sanctuaries, places where survivors have been hiding. Siena's compound in Romania, a hybrid safe house in Bulgaria, a resistance cell in Poland, all within a few hours of here. What about them? I've been in contact with their leaders carefully, anonymously, testing the waters. He met her eyes. They're scared, Elara, desperate, watching their people get picked off one by one while they hide and hope the syndicate doesn't find them next. But when I told them about you, about the last Pureblood, about Lyra, about what happened in Montana, they listened. You told them about us. Alarm spiked through her. Dominic, if that information gets to the wrong people. It won't. These are people who have lost everything to the syndicate. Family, friends, their entire way of life. They want to fight back. They're just waiting for someone to lead them. Elara looked at Lyra, who was watching them both with those two intelligent golden eyes. You want me to be that leader, she said slowly. I want us to stop running and start building what you talked about. An army, a resistance. A real chance at survival instead of this slow death by 1,000 cuts. It was insane. Everything about it was insane. She was a fugitive, a mother with a hybrid child who aged too fast and possessed powers no one understood. She had no military training, no political experience, no qualifications for leading anyone. But she was also the last pureblood vampire, the symbol of a people who'd been hunted to near extinction. The mother of the child who proved that vampires and humans could create life together instead of just taking it. And symbols had power. If we do this, she said slowly, there's no going back. The syndicate will never stop hunting us. Helena Cross will make it her personal mission to destroy everything we build. They're already doing that. At least this way we go down fighting. Elara looked at her daughter. Lyra, do you understand what Daddy and I are talking about? Lyra nodded solemnly. Fighting to make safe for everyone. It's going to be dangerous. Already dangerous. Lyra's small hand found Elara's, but together, always together. The simple faith in those words broke something in Elara's chest and rebuilt it stronger. All right, she said, meeting Dominic's eyes. Set up a meeting. With all of them. Every sanctuary, every safe house. Every resistance cell. If we're going to do this, we do it right. When? Tonight, before Helena's strike team arrives. If they want to find us, let them find us standing with an army at our backs. Dominic smiled, fierce and proud. I'll make the calls. 6 hours later, the abandoned warehouse on the edge of Prague was filled with vampires. Not many, maybe 40 total. But they represented something that hadn't existed in over 3 decades, a gathering of survivors. People who'd been hunted, traumatized, scattered to the winds, coming together in one place for the first time since the syndicate began their genocide. Elara stood before them, Lyra at her side, and felt the weight of their expectations like a physical pressure. They wanted hope, wanted a reason to believe that survival was possible, wanted her to be something she wasn't sure she could be. I'm not a leader, she began, her voice carrying through the warehouse. I'm not a general or a strategist or anyone particularly special. I'm just someone who refused to die when the syndicate decided my people were better off extinct. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Agreement, recognition. But I am the last pureblood vampire, and my daughter, she placed her hand on Lyra's shoulder, is the first hybrid born from love instead of experimentation. We represent what the syndicate fears most. Not our strength, not our powers, but our potential. The potential for vampires and humans to coexist, to build families together, to be more than monsters and victims. Someone in the crowd shouted, They'll never accept us. They've been killing us for 30 years. You're right, Elara agreed. The syndicate will never accept us. Helena Cross will hunt us until we're all dead, or she is. But the syndicate isn't humanity. It's a paramilitary organization built on fear and hatred. And fear can be overcome. Hatred can be challenged. With what? Another voice called. They have weapons, technology, governments backing them. What do we have? Each other. Elara gestured to the assembled group. We have survivors who have endured decades of persecution. We have knowledge of how they operate. We have the moral high ground. We're fighting for the right to exist, not the right to exterminate others. And we have something they can never have. What's that? Nothing left to lose. The silence that followed was profound. The syndicate has spent 30 years hunting us in the shadows, Elara continued. Killing us quietly, erasing us from history like we never existed. They've counted on our fear, our isolation, our willingness to die silently rather than fight back. But what if we stopped hiding? What if we brought our existence into the light, showed the world what they've been doing, made them see that we're not monsters, we're people fighting for survival? They'll kill us even faster, someone protested. Maybe. Or maybe the world will finally pay attention. Maybe people will start asking why a paramilitary organization has the authority to execute anyone they deem a threat. Maybe we'll force them to justify their genocide instead of conducting it in secret. A woman in the back stood up, Sienna. Elara realized, the vampire who'd built the Romanian sanctuary. She was older, elegant, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. "You're talking about exposing ourselves," Sienna said. "Deliberately." After decades of hiding. Yes, that's suicide. No, hiding is suicide, slow and certain. This, Elara gestured to the assembled group, this is a chance, maybe the only one we'll ever get. Helena Cross is coming for me tonight, for Lyra, for anyone associated with us. We can scatter again, run like we've been running, and maybe some of us survive another few months, or we can stand our ground, make our existence known, force the syndicate to fight us in public instead of in shadows. The warehouse erupted into argument. Some agreed, others vehemently opposed. The debate raged for nearly an hour. Finally, Dominic stood up, his voice cut through the chaos. "I was a syndicate hunter for 5 years," he said. The room went silent. "I believed in their mission, believed vampires were monsters who needed to be eliminated for humanity's safety. And then I met Elara, got to know her, saw that she was just a person trying to survive. And I realized everything I'd been taught was a lie." He moved to stand beside Elara and Lyra, his hand finding his wife's. "The syndicate operates on fear and misinformation. They've spent decades convincing the world that all vampires are predators, all hybrids are abominations, all non-humans are threats, but they're wrong. And the only way to prove they're wrong is to show the world what they've been hiding, to put faces to the people they're killing. To make our humanity, our personhood, impossible to ignore." A young man in the front row stood up. "I'm in. My parents were killed by the syndicate when I was 10. I've been hiding ever since. I'm tired of being afraid." Another stood. "My partner was a hybrid. They took her 3 years ago. I want to fight back." One by one they stood, vampires who'd lost everything, hybrids who'd never known peace. Humans who'd chosen to stand with the people they loved instead of the organization that demanded their deaths. Not all of them, maybe half the room, but it was enough. "Then we make our stand tonight," Elara said. "When Helena Cross comes, we'll be ready, and the world will be watching." Drop a comment if you think this plan is brilliant or crazy. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, do it now because the final confrontation is going to be epic. Helena Cross arrived with 50 hunters and a media blackout order. She'd planned this operation carefully. Overwhelming force. No survivors, no witnesses. The last Pureblood and her abomination child would be terminated, along with anyone foolish enough to stand with them. What she found instead was a trap. The warehouse was lit up like a stadium. Cameras, dozens of them, pointed at every entrance. And standing in the center of it all was Elara, holding Lyra, with 40 vampires and hybrids standing behind her. "Helena Cross," Elara called out, her voice amplified by speakers. "Director of the Syndicate's Operations Division, welcome, we've been expecting you." Helena's hand went to her weapon. Around her, her hunters took defensive positions. "This is over, Elara," Helena said. "Surrender the hybrid child and we'll make this quick." "No, what's over is your genocide in the shadows." Elara gestured to the cameras. "Everything happening here tonight is being live-streamed to 50 news organizations worldwide. Every major social media platform. Encrypted channels the syndicate can't shut down. The whole world is watching, Helena, so I'll ask you, are you really going to massacre 40 unarmed people on camera?" Helena's face went white as she realized the trap she'd walked into. "You're bluffing. Those cameras aren't real, aren't live. Check your phone. Check the feeds. We're trending on 6 platforms already." Helena pulled out her phone. Elara watched the color drain from her face as she verified the truth. They were live. Millions of people were watching. "You can't do this," Helena hissed. "Revealing vampires to the world, you're violating international security protocols. Protocols that your organization wrote to justify hunting us," Elara shot back. "The syndicate has spent 30 years operating outside any legal framework, answering to no one, killing anyone they deemed a threat." "Well, I'm done accepting that. We're done hiding, we're done dying quietly." She looked directly into the cameras. "My name is Elara, I'm the last pureblood vampire. This is my daughter, Lyra. She's 3 months old and hybrid, half vampire, half human. Living proof that our species aren't natural enemies, that we can build families together, create life instead of just taking it." "Mama," Lyra said softly, her golden eyes wide. It's okay, baby, I've got you. Elara turned her attention back to Helena. The Syndicate has killed thousands of vampires over the past 3 decades. Not criminals, not monsters, people. Some of them were ancient, some were children. All of them were executed without trial, without due process, without anyone even knowing they existed. That ends tonight. You're signing your own death warrant, Helena said coldly. Even if I don't kill you here, there are governments, militaries, entire nations that will hunt you now. You've made vampires public. You've proven we exist. Do you really think humanity will respond with acceptance instead of fear? I don't know, maybe they will fear us. Maybe this makes everything worse. Elara's voice was steady. But at least they'll know we exist. At least our deaths will mean something instead of disappearing into silence. And maybe, just maybe, some of them will see that we're not the monsters you've claimed. That we're just people trying to survive. The standoff stretched. Helena's hunters had their weapons trained. Elara's group stood unarmed but defiant, and the whole world watched. Then something unexpected happened. Helena lowered her weapon. Stand down, she ordered her hunters. Ma'am, one of them protested. I said stand down. She met Elara's eyes across the warehouse. You win this round, but this isn't over. The Syndicate will regroup. Adapt. We've been operating in shadows for 30 years. We can adapt to the light. Then adapt, Elara said. But know that we'll be watching, and so will the world. Your genocide days are over. Helena smiled, cold and humorless. You really think making vampires public will save you? You've just painted a target on every non-human in the world. Congratulations. You've accelerated our work by decades. She turned and left, her hunters following. The warehouse erupted in confused celebration. They'd survived. They'd won. But Elara knew Helena was right. They just changed everything. And change was never clean. Over the next week, the world exploded. The live stream had been viewed over 500 million times. News organizations ran nothing but vampire-related stories. Governments convened emergency sessions. Religious leaders weighed in. Scientists demanded access to study hybrid genetics. And the public response was exactly what Helena had predicted, divided. Some saw vampires as victims of an illegal genocide. Organized protests demanding the Syndicate be shut down. Called for equal rights and protection. Others saw them as an existential threat, demanded expanded hunting operations, formed militia groups to protect humanity from the vampire menace. Violence erupted in cities worldwide. Suspected vampires were attacked in the streets. Actual vampires fought back. Humans caught in the crossfire died. The revelation of vampires to the world had unleashed chaos. Elara watched it all from their new safe house, a fortified compound in the Romanian mountains that Sienna had prepared, and felt the weight of every death. I did this, she said quietly, watching news footage of a mob burning down a building suspected of housing vampires. 17 people dead, only 3 of them actually vampires. No, Dominic came up behind her, his hands on her shoulders. The Syndicate did this. 30 years of genocide and lies. You just exposed the truth. The truth is killing people. People were already dying, just different people. In secret. Now at least it's visible. Now at least there's a chance for something to change. Elara wanted to believe him, wanted to think that exposure would eventually lead to understanding and coexistence. But the bodies kept piling up, and every night she held Lyra and wondered if she doomed her daughter instead of saving her. Lyra was 5 months old now but looked like a 6-year-old child. Her powers continued to develop in ways neither Elara nor Dominic could predict or control. She could heal minor injuries with a touch, could sense danger before it arrived, could move with speed that rivaled Elara's own, and she understood everything. Mama sad, Lyra said one evening, curling into Elara's lap. Because people fighting. Yes, baby. My fault. No, Elara gripped her daughter tight. Never your fault. It's complicated. Grown-up problems. People die because I exist. The simple truth of it broke Elara's heart. People die because of fear, because of hatred, not because of you. Then I fix fear, I fix hatred. I wish it was that simple. Lyra pulled back, looking at her mother with eyes far too old for her apparent age. I heal you when you died, I can heal other things too. Lyra, you can't heal the whole world. Can try. Before Elara could respond, alarms blared through the compound. Dominic burst into the room. We've got incoming. Military helicopter, armed forces, Romanian government responding to international pressure to hand us over. How many? Too many. We need to evacuate, now. They'd known this was coming. known that eventually governments would act, but knowing and experiencing were different things. The compound descended into controlled chaos. Vampires and hybrids scattered to pre-planned escape routes. Elara grabbed their emergency bag, Lyra clutched to her chest. They were halfway to the vehicle bay when Lyra spoke. "No." "What?" Elara didn't slow down. "No running, no more hiding." Lyra wriggled out of her mother's arms, landing on her feet. "I talked to them. Lyra, you're 5 months old, and I speak truth, like Mama did." She walked toward the main entrance, her small figure radiating determination. Elara and Dominic exchanged panicked looks and ran after her. Lyra reached the entrance just as the Romanian forces breached it. Soldiers poured in, weapons raised, shouting orders, and stopped dead when they saw a 6-year-old-looking child standing in their path. "Don't shoot," someone yelled. "There's a kid." Lyra stepped forward, hands raised and empty. "My name is Lyra," she said in perfect Romanian, a language Elara didn't even know she'd learned. "I am the hybrid child you have come for. I surrender. But I ask you, do I look like a monster?" Soldiers stared at her, weapons wavering. "I am 3 months old in truth, but my body ages faster because of my hybrid nature. I have never hurt anyone, never fed on a human, never done anything except exist. Is that a crime worthy of execution?" Silence. The commanding officer, a woman in her 40s with hardened eyes, stepped forward. "You're just a child." "I am a person," Lyra corrected gently. "Like you, different, yes, but not dangerous, not a monster, just alive." The officer knelt to Lyra's eye level. "The orders I have say you're a threat to national security, that hybrids are unstable, dangerous. And what do your eyes say?" The woman was quiet for a long moment, studying Lyra's face. Those golden eyes that held too much wisdom, that small form that radiated both innocence and power. "They say you're a child who doesn't deserve to die for what you are." She stood, addressing her soldiers. "Stand down. We're not executing children today." "Ma'am, our orders. I'll take responsibility." She looked at Elara, who'd appeared beside Lyra. "You're the mother." "Yes." "Then get out of here, take your daughter and run, because my superiors won't be as conflicted as I am." "Thank you," Elara breathed. "Don't thank me, just survive, and prove that we made the right choice." They fled into the Romanian night, leaving behind a compound full of witnesses who'd just seen a hybrid child choose diplomacy over violence. The footage hit the internet within hours. Millions watched a 6-year-old girl face down armed soldiers with nothing but words. Watched hardened military personnel choose mercy over orders. The narrative shifted. Not completely. Not everywhere. But enough. Enough that protests calling for vampire rights grew larger. Enough that governments began questioning the syndicate's authority. Enough that the conversation changed from, should we exterminate vampires, to how do we coexist with them? It wasn't victory. It was just the beginning of a very long fight, but it was something. Before I finish this story, I need to hear from you one last time. Comment below and tell me what you think Lyra will become when she grows up. And if this story has moved you at all, subscribe to this channel, because there are more stories like this coming. 1 year later, the accords were signed in Geneva, tentative, fragile, incomplete, but they were something. Vampires and hybrids would be granted legal personhood in signatory nations. The syndicate would be dissolved and replaced with an international oversight committee with representatives from both human and vampire communities. Reparations would be paid to survivors of the genocide. It wasn't justice. Couldn't be justice for the thousands who died, but it was acknowledgement, recognition, a foundation to build on. Elara stood in the Geneva conference hall, Lyra beside her, and felt the impossibility of the moment. A year ago, they'd been hunted fugitives with no hope and no future. Now they were delegates at an international peace summit. Lyra was 14 months old but looked like a teenager now. Her aging had begun to slow, her hybrid genetics finally stabilizing. She'd become something of a symbol, the child whose speech to Romanian soldiers had gone viral, whose existence proved that vampires and humans could create life together. But symbols came with prices. She'd lost her childhood. Would never have a normal life. Would spend her existence as a bridge between two species that still regarded each other with suspicion and fear. "Is this what you wanted?" Lyra asked quietly, watching diplomats argue over the terms of coexistence. "I don't know," Elara admitted. "I wanted you to be safe, to have a life." But looking at all this, she gestured to the conference hall, to the carefully negotiated treaties, to the armed guards still watching them with wary eyes. "I'm not sure anyone is truly safe yet. But we're alive," Lyra said. That's more than we had before. Yes, we're alive. Dominic approached them, his expression troubled. Helena Cross just arrived. She's part of the human delegation. Elara's hand instinctively moved to Lyra's shoulder. Of course she is. The syndicate had officially been dissolved, but its members hadn't simply disappeared. Many had integrated into the new oversight committee, bringing their expertise and their prejudices with them. Helena Cross had leveraged her position as former director into a seat at the negotiating table. She crossed the room toward them now, her steps measured and deliberate. 2 years hadn't softened her. If anything, she looked harder, more determined. Elara, Lyra, she nodded to each of them. Dominic. Helena, Elara replied coolly. Come to finish what you started? No, I came to ensure these accords actually work. Helena's eyes were cold but not hostile. You exposed vampires to the world, made it I.